temples in Dallas, they get very stiff sentences. They don't tolerate that in Texas. So I would venture to say that there's no anti-Semitism is not an issue in Texas. Somebody may say I'm wrong and say, well, when I was in Jasper, Texas, they ran me out. I don't think so. It's not an issue.
Forgetting anti-Semitism, how about other? How does it play out?
Does it play out
in any significant way? The different
I don't,
political orientations.
Of course,
in daily life.
There are more Democrats in New York, and Dallas is certainly heavily Republican. But Americans are, if we were to go to Egypt or Asia or something, if you took a black guy from the ghetto and a billionaire from Park Avenue and put them in another country or another planet, Americans are more American than they think, than they realize. There are so many similarities between us from coast to coast that overweigh. We don't realize that. In Dallas, of course there are subtle differences between people in Texas and New York, and there are bigger differences in the accent. When I go to New York, I hear, I get off the plane in LaGuardia, and the first thing you hear is, "Hey, fuck you," and I say, "Welcome home, man. It feels good to hear that." You don't hear "Hey, fuck you. Take a left and go fuck yourself." You don't hear that in Texas. That's the obvious things. The worst cultural infraction to me in Dallas is that you can't order a plain slice of pizza. It's got to be called a cheese slice. And I refuse to say, yes, cheese. I say plain. And they go, what do you mean plain? You mean with cheese? I said, well, of course with cheese, but put tomato sauce on it too. Plain. They won't. I can't get them to come around on that. And at 7-Eleven, or a grocery store, they say, you want a sack with that instead of you want a bag with that. And I always say, put it in a bag. And they go, you mean a sack? I say, no, put it in a bag. Damn it. That's the level of cultural differences, really.
Tell me about your Ed Wood musical.
The worst. Well, Drew and I, my brother, the cartoonist, Drew Friedman, had been big advocates of Ed Wood when he was, right after he died. Especially Drew was drawing pictures from Plan 9 of outer space, and he did the Ed Wood playing cards. And through Drew, I became very inspired by Ed Wood, the anti-genius, a guy who struggled for years in Hollywood at the very bottom of the food chain, and yet had an attitude, his desire trumped his stupidity. He got films made. They became masterpieces of bad cinema, so that they sing and they entertain you and they inspire you in a whole way that they were not intended to. So I said, what a great idea for a Broadway musical. And look at the characters, the aging elderly Bela Lugosi, the great Vampira who just passed away, who was the Los Angeles kitty monster host in the 50s. She was gorgeous, and she had this thin waistline, and she was the first TV horror hostess who really started based on Morticia Addams, I suppose. And Ed Wood and Tor Johnson, the character actor, 400-pound wrestler. These were the main characters, and I wrote a musical with Richard Giacomo, my partner. We wrote the libretto, and I wrote all the music, the score, and we really thought we were going to get it on. And then this movie came out, Ed Wood, at the same time we were finishing, and it was who would ever think there would be a Hollywood film on Ed Wood, the least likely subject in the world? It would be like making a film on that guy over there, eating an orange in that chair. And that blew me out of the water and overshadowed my thing. But it came out like right before the movie as a CD. And it came out in Europe. A company in Europe put it out called Gorse was their name. They were a record company in London. And they brought me over to perform the score with a whole cast of singers and an orchestra at the London Film Theatre. I think this was 1994. So it's been a cult favorite on album. It's called The Worst. And so much for that.
Tell me about your book, Tell the Truth Until They Bleed.
Well, collection of music. I don't know how to describe the pieces. Some of them read like short stories. The lead-off chapter is what was left of what was going to be a book with Jerry Lieber of Lieber and Stoller, and I salvaged the book we were working on and took a lot of the stuff and made it into my first chapter. Kiss My Big Black Tookus. And that's the showpiece of the book. And I did a kiss and tell of an affair of my late 70s girlfriend, Ronnie Spector. I wrote about the end of our relationship, which was terrible. The beginning was great, but the very end of it was a nightmare, and so naturally that's what I focused on and made it into a short story. But it's all accurate. A profile of Doc Pomus, my dear friend who I miss a lot, great songwriter. And then a lot of Texas musicians. Keith Ferguson of the Fabulous Thunderbirds, the coolest Texas bass player who ever lived. So I covered New York. Hello. I wish I had some breadcrumbs for you. Hello. Hello. How do you do? Good morning. Good morning to you. Okay. So it's a collection of music pieces, backbeat books. You read it, Luke. You know, and you know about some of the folks.
I'll be maybe talking out of school here, but I think I overheard you say that you hate writing on music.
Yeah. Music is meant to be played, performed, recorded, not written about. So I hate writing about music. And I don't think I wrote about music in this book. I wrote about people. I didn't specifically... obviously it's about music too, but it's more, they're profiles of people who are in various states of distress, being musicians, and their lives. So it doesn't need to be filed in the music section of the bookstore. It could have gone in another section, as far as I'm concerned.
What happened to the movie Tales of Times Square?
Well, the director, Paul Stone, who's a terrific chap, I like him a lot, and I supported him in his making of it in New York, but he stopped 45 minutes into the film and ran out of funding somehow, even though he does direct commercials for Fiat and Donald Trump as his main line of business, but somehow he was not able to complete the film. So we have a half-finished film. He wins awards with it anyway at film festivals. He's played at least 35 film festivals with a 40-minute version of Tales of Times Square. He still intends to finish it. You know, I ain't making deals with filmmakers with credit cards anymore. I'm sticking with the big boys, or nothing. Like with Black Cracker, I don't give a shit I do give a shit, but I don't really give a shit if anything's made. A book should stand on its own. It doesn't need to have a movie in order to give it credibility. And people see, especially, that's a sacrilegious thing to say in Los Angeles because it's an industry town. But fuck the film industry. A book should be able to be more important. It is in my eyes. I love books much more than movies. But the reality is that the financial considerations of movies can keep a writer's life afloat, and a book cannot. So that's the reality of it.
What happened to the documentary you made on you, Blacks and Jews?
Well, there's another example. It just played some select theaters and some film festivals, and it was not sold to HBO or wherever he intended it to go. I don't own the rights or anything with either one of these films, Tales of Times Square. Blacks and Jews is not bad. I'm not ashamed of it. It's a documentary on my life, and there's a lot about Black Cracker in there. And I thought the guy did a very good job, Kevin Page. You know, again, I love the guy. But he tried to sell it